We love it.
Well, I have a resident expert I can consult with.
Anytime. I've got bonus books and outlines and you name it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we are gathering slowly here. Dave left his palm tree behind for the evening.
I did. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
John said he can't find the login info.
Greetings to Campbell and Dave Callahan.
Happy New Year, everyone. I just have a quick question. Can anyone hear a radio in the background of me?
No.
No.
You want to
Perfect.
turn it up? What are you playing, Campbell?
Just listen to the
As long as it's the Rolling Stones, like, it's got to be something energizing here.
I need something energizing. True.
Thank you, Vince, for being with us. We appreciate it. Is Trevor your colleague?
Hi, Judith. How you doing? Trevor is one of the consultants with Arcadis. He's the lead for that team.
Well, greetings. Hard to tell where anybody is because we all look more or less like we're in a white painted room with light, if we can muster it. But okay, I'm waiting just a moment more. I see Leslie's with us. Thank you, Leslie, for being here. John Trudell and Stephen Welch from the planning board. And then there's Stephen Welch popping up. I think I'll go ahead and just start the formalities here because we may have a shorter meeting than some, and I'd like to not keep people waiting if that's possible. Welcome everybody who's on the screen and others who may be listening. This is the Planning Board's January meeting, and we appreciate your being with us. As you know, I'm not going to read it again, the governor's executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meetings law. However, as we know, we're operating via Zoom. The town TV channel thankfully makes us available to those who'd like to watch afterward. And that means for our votes and things, we have to proceed by roll call, which we're getting pretty used to at this point. So let me see about attendance first, and then we'll move along to getting the agenda approved. As some of you know, those of you who may be tuning in here, we've had a number of matters that have asked to be continued late in the day here. So some of you may have gotten an email telling you that. Others will try to give you a briefing on that once we finish these formalities about who's in attendance. So for the planning board, Fritz McClure.
Aye.
Nat Lowell.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Judith Wagner, aye. And I see David Callahan
Aye.
and Campbell Sutton.
Aye.
And I saw Stephen Welch's name come up, but then it's disappeared, so he may be back. John Trudell, a regular member, and I expect he'll be here too, but he may be caught in transit. Our wonderful staff is with us, just so everybody knows and recognizes them. Catherine Ansero, we thank you for being with us. Megan Trudell and Leslie Snell, Director. Andrew Vorse is not able to be with us tonight. Then we have other staff, Vince Murphy, who works with the Coastal Resiliency Commission. And you also are with Natural Resources, so you have your hands at all the important issues around natural resources and flooding and all manner of things like that. And your colleague, Trevor Johnson, is here for Arcadis, the consultant working on coastal resiliency, I understand. Then we have others who have matters that are going to come up. Let me just call and confirm you're here, so that helps our note-taking process. John Brescher, welcome. You can wave or say
Thank you.
yes.
Lovely to be here.
Dan Malloy. He waved.
Afternoon.
Okay. Mike Conley. He disappeared. He'll be back, I suspect. There you are. Okay. Don Bracken.
Yeah.
Paul Santos. I'm sure he'll be here. He's up, but not till later. Ben Norman.
Here.
Thank you. Jay Maroney. Doug Carlson. Tom Garrett.
Hi, here.
Hi, thank you. And Katie Mitchell.
I'm here.
Thank you. So there may be others coming in to join us, but that's who we have at the moment. So I'm calling the meeting to order now. It's 4:08, and I wonder if someone would be willing to approve the agenda. It's the revised agenda that Megan has distributed. Nat, you're
Megan, Madam Chair, sorry, Madam Chair, can I just ask Megan a question? Somebody just messaged me that's trying to get on, and I'm not sure what to tell her. Elaine is trying to get on.
There's an
So,
Elaine
I don't
with her
really
hand
know.
raised.
Elaine Mooney, do you
Yeah.
see her on there?
Yep, I see her on as an attendee.
So she's all set then.
And I see John Trudell is here, who's a planning board member who's come in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Here.
Thanks for
Sorry
doing
about that.
Okay, we're just any others? Nat, it's good you're such a texting
I just,
tornado.
unfortunately,
tornado of
I had a
texting, so-
cell phone when they were still wired to your car, so I guess that's
right.
why it is. There's nothing
We should also note Stephen Welch is here, our other alternate. So I think we can proceed now. We've done the attendance thing a couple of times. Now, would you move approval of the revised agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
That was Dave Iverson, ready for vote. Chris,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
John,
John, you're muted.
Aye.
And Judith, so we have the agenda approved. Megan, could you just do before we move to Arcadis, which will be first up, could you just do a quick rundown for anybody who's either trying to connect or thinking about watching this through to the end about what matters have been continued or withdrawn?
Sure. So a new posted agenda went up around, I don't know, 2 o'clock this afternoon, which continued 69 Sparks Avenue, 2 Mayflower Circle, and 10 Cliff Road. So those are published online. In addition to that, not published on this agenda, we will also be continuing 5 Luff Road and 5 Bailey Road. So if you're here to discuss any of those, they will not be taken up at this meeting under public hearings. For A&R plans, 33 Hinsdale Road has requested to withdraw their applications. And I'd request that you continue the minutes to the next meeting. I believe
Okay.
those, oh, yep, and the Harbor Place discussion will also be continued.
Because Andrew's not available. So that's the revised agenda we just approved. Just wanted to be sure that anybody in the public who hasn't pulled that off the web is familiar with that. Okay, take it away, Vince and Trevor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to do a very, very brief introduction and then turn it over to Trevor with your permission after that. The town of Nantucket and the Coast Resiliency Advisory Committee has committed to undertaking a coast resilience plan. The primary goal of the CRP is to address the coastal flooding and erosion around the island. To undertake this plan, we have hired Arcadis with sub-consultants Stoss, One Architecture and the Craig Group. The work began in the end of September of 2020 and is due for completion in September of this year. Background data collection is now near complete. That has allowed the risk assessment to begin. There is now a page on the town website with much information on the Coast Resilience Plan and its development and timelines. It also links back to previous plans such as the Hazard Mitigation Plan and other related plans and works that the CRP will build on. There's also a sign-up section to give and get information as the plan develops. Arcadis and partners are also undertaking a listening tour with key stakeholders. They have already met with several town department heads, as well as input from some input from key committees over the last few weeks, as well as today with the planning board.
And
So
Vince, as I know you know, but just so that the rest of the board knows, Fritz McClure's our rep on the CRAC Commission. So
correct.
he may have some things to share as well.
Yes, and I must also note that Mary Longacre is an attendee. Should anyone wish to hear from her, or if she should wish to make comment. With the chair's permission, that's my little introduction, and I'd like to pass it to Trevor.
Thank you. Welcome, Trevor. We're happy to see you. Where are you? Up in some island of Boston Harbor, checking out the resiliency of your kayak?
I wish. Far less exotic. Although I am in the city of Boston. I live in the Jamaica Plain neighborhood of Boston. So currently in my residence there. And thanks to the planning board and Madam Chair for having me here today. As Vince mentioned, we've been doing kind of a listening tour, roadshow amongst various town boards, commissions, departments, and some organizations. And we've learned a lot and really had some great conversations during this kind of first phase of community engagement. So I will say also apologies to anybody that has attended any of those meetings. This presentation will be very familiar to them, as will the information. But we're trying to create kind of a sort of a a baseline understanding around the community. So making sure we're sharing the same information out during this first phase. So if it's okay, may I share my screen with the presentation?
Thank you. And Megan or Catherine, one of you will help him if he needs it. I bet you've done this before, Trevor.
Yes, yeah. So I think I can get it up here. All right. Let me know. Can you see the
Yes.
Yes.
do you see the slide, or do you see just the slide, or do you see the format with the next slide as well?
No, you're in presentation mode. You're good to go.
Okay, great. Sorry, it's always a little different on
No
each
problem.
platform. So yes, what I'm here to do is provide kind of an overview of the Nantucket Coastal Resilience Plan. Presentation will be, about 20 minutes, and then happy to answer any questions or kind of have an open discussion with the planning board and attendees about what we're working on. So yes, the meeting objectives are to provide an overview of the Coastal Resilience Plan, project team, our process, and our scope, clarify what it is that we need to ensure that we have a successful project, and then seek input on the town's coastal resilience concerns and opportunities. So I'll talk a bit about the project overview, roles and responsibilities, focus in some depth on our community engagement approach, since it's really been the focus of our work so far. And then a little bit on kind of next steps and where we're headed over the coming months. So I think Vince gave a great introduction to our project team. We are, contracted with the town, but working very closely with the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee as our steering committee. And we'll be also presenting to and undertaking a workshop with the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee tomorrow morning. So I work with the design and consulting firm Arcadis, that is a global engineering firm. We're based globally in the Netherlands, though we have a very large presence here in the United States. One of our kind of areas of expertise is around water management or resilience, really drawing on our Dutch heritage. And so we've
Trevor,
worked with,
I'm
yes.
sorry, I don't mean to be rude.
No, absolutely.
But would you brag a minute on yourself about your own background and your disciplinary background and other, that'll help us know what questions would be suitable to offer to you?
Sure.
Don't
Yeah,
mind.
absolutely.
Thank
No,
you.
no, it's great. So yeah, I'm a senior resilience planner with Arcadis, serving as the project manager on this effort. My background is as an urban planner, so I'm not an engineer, but I work closely with lots of them, as well as designers and other disciplines. Let's see, I got my planning degree from the Harvard Graduate School of Design, and the way I sort of found my way into the world of coastal resilience was that while I was there is when Hurricane Sandy struck, and it just became a huge kind of focus in the design and planning community about the role that planning could play in helping advance resilience. So after I graduated, I spent a number of years in New York working on post-Hurricane Sandy recovery, and working for the city and the Department of City Planning, I should say, primarily on kind of land use and zoning tools for increasing resilience, and helping some of the neighborhoods in New York City that are particularly vulnerable to sea level rise and coastal flooding, developing kind of adaptation pathways through land use and zoning regulations. So I think this board here would be is perhaps the most applicable to those kinds of questions.
Welcome home back to the ground here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and I should say we met with staff in the planning department, I think 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was last week. I'm having trouble remembering, but we had a really good conversation about those topics as well. So happy to continue that conversation today. And then, we do have an interdisciplinary team. So as Vince mentioned, we're working with STOSS, a landscape and planning firm that has equally been involved in climate resilience planning, particularly in New England, but elsewhere as well. One Architecture is an urban design and architecture firm that specializes in the world of coastal resilience. And then the Craig Group, who I think many folks on the call will be familiar with. They're currently working on the Resilient Nantucket project and bring expertise in historic preservation and climate adaptation. So we do have a set of principles that guide our work. These are the sort of values that we are looking to always bring to the table as we undertake our analyses and make our recommendations. So the first is that we're seeking to honor the community heritage and identity through adaptation. We know that Nantucket is a very unique and special place, and we do not want to lose sight of that as we're developing kind of tailored solutions for this community. We want to address resilience at multiple scales. We know that thinking across scales is a really effective way to advance resilience from individual buildings all the way out to the scale of kind of ecological zones. Inclusive and responsive stakeholder engagement is really the backbone of our work. We're working with the town for about a year on this project, but it's really the community that's going to have to carry it forward once the planning process is complete. And the best way to do that is to have a really robust process that builds capacity and equips the community with the tools to move forward. And then speaking of moving forward, making sure that everything that we do has an eye towards implementation. So the plan, I think as town manager Libby Gibson put it during a meeting we had with her, is that this plan doesn't just sit on the shelf, but is really a tool for the community to use towards implementation and adaptation. This is just a picture that I've been showing because I did want to make sure that it was clear that our team had made a trip to the island. This is November 12th. And we had a beautiful day on day one of our visit. And then the second day, I think we got the other side of the Nantucket experience with a 5-hour walking tour of downtown in pretty torrential rain, I would say. And this is after the wind picked up and the temperature dropped about 20 degrees. So it was in some ways great to see some of the challenges in practice here. So sorry to move quickly. Now I'll just walk through kind of an overview of our scope and project schedule. So again, the goal of the project is to develop a comprehensive plan to address coastal flooding, sea level rise, and erosion for the entire island and county. The process will include identifying important community assets and infrastructure, assessing vulnerabilities and risks from future coastal flooding and erosion, identifying actions to reduce coastal flood and erosion risks, and then developing a detailed, prioritized resilience and adaptation action plan. We have been developing a mission statement, and this mission statement is something that we are looking to read and kind of work with the community and various stakeholders throughout the process to refine. And it's intended to really ground our process in a shared understanding of what it is that we're all trying to achieve together. So I'll just read it here and we can discuss it later if anybody has questions. The Nantucket Coastal Resilience Plan draws on the cherished, built, and natural heritage of Nantucket to create a community-supported roadmap to implementation for a series of layered flood control and adaptation approaches that lessen the loss from storm surges and help the community adapt to rising seas and eroding coastlines. In coordination with other ongoing adaptation and sustainability initiatives, the plan addresses the whole island and county while respecting the unique characteristics of each neighborhood. Driven by the inclusive and equitable engagement of all, the plan aspires to create social, environmental, and economic benefits and value to everyone who will share in Nantucket's future. Our scope is quite comprehensive. So in terms of risks, we are looking at coastal flooding and storm surge, coastal erosion, and then sea level rise and its impacts on both coastal erosion and storm surge. Our scale of investigation is to look, as I mentioned before, island-wide. We're looking at, impacts and the potential solutions at various scales, from built environment, critical infrastructure, natural resources, and the interdependencies that link these systems and assets together. And then solution development, we're looking, starting with, a wide potential toolkit of options that we'll look to refine through our process, from traditional kind of flood defense structural solutions, where those may be necessary and appropriate, to nature-based solutions. I think all of our team members, and I know Vince and his colleagues and many of the stakeholders that we're working with, have a strong preference for nature-based solutions, and that's very much front of our mind as we move forward. But also sort of non-physical solutions, policy and regulation tools that can be quite effective at reducing future risk and helping advance adaptation over time. And then finally, with the recognition that there's a significant amount of property on Nantucket that is obviously privately owned, guidance and education of private property owners and builders is critical. Just a bit about our process. We have 5 primary tasks that we'll be working on. We're underway on tasks 1, 2, and 3, which underway or largely concluded, I should say. Task 1, kind of information gathering and kicking off the project, which we started in October of last year. Community and stakeholder engagement, and then the hazard assessment and risk and vulnerability assessment, which is what we're starting to dig into now. I want to just point out on this slide a couple of things. One is that the stakeholder engagement process, which we started in November, is going to continue throughout the entire process. So we'll be looking for multiple kind of touch points with various stakeholders as we go. The risk and vulnerability analysis is again started just at the end of last year, and will continue through the end of March, when we will look to deliver our mid-project report, which will be a summary of our risk and vulnerability analysis, which is the STAR there in the March-April timeframe. The STAR or significant milestone in January is a date that I'd like to put on all of your calendars to save, and that's January 28th at 5:30. We'll have our first community-wide open house with a focus on making sure that the community at large is well aware of this process, and undertaking kind of a visioning workshop to make sure that, or to provide the opportunity for the community to share with us what the long-term vision for Nantucket can and should be. So again, that's January 28th at 5:30 p.m. Look for more information on that this week. Oh, one last thing on this slide, just that our project does extend through September of this year, when we'll deliver the final plan. Community engagement, we are breaking into 4 different phases. We're wrapping up now the kind of phase 1 listening tour, and beginning active planning for phase 2, which is our first public workshop, and we'll also be launching a new interactive engagement application tool that will allow for community members to participate and provide feedback through their smartphones, and we'll have other activities through phase 2 as well. And then later in the process, we'll have another opportunity for a public workshop as we get into solution development and refining our kind of adaptation pathways. Obviously, Nantucket, the community has done a significant amount of planning already. Our team is well aware of that, and we're certainly looking to build off of all this work as we move forward. So just as a statement on that, we say that this project should honor, leverage, and advance, but not supplant, disrupt, or duplicate other resilience efforts on Nantucket. But we are very fortunate to have quite a bit of work that's already been done that we can leap off from. And then these questions, I think, are just sharing with you, because these are the questions that are kind of driving our process as we begin. And I'll read them here, and we can discuss any others that you'd like us to be thinking about as well. So what are the shared challenges and opportunities? What are the conflicts and tensions that need to be resolved? What information and recommendations from prior studies should we carry forward? and conversely, which may need to be reassessed. What are the most urgent needs to reduce risk? What do decision makers and key stakeholders need to be able to move forward immediately? What are the gaps in knowledge and understanding? Where can we help advance and catalyze? And what are the low-hanging fruits? Where can we help advance? And how can this project add social, economic, and ecological value and improve quality of life on Nantucket? We're well aware that resilience is about more than risk reduction. It's about, increasing the community's ability to respond and recover from climate events, but also, increasing resilience through the addition of new value to the community, whether those social, economic, or ecological. In terms of roles and responsibilities, we obviously are part of a nested structure of many stakeholders and many who will play a role in this plan. And the idea is very much that our team is working across all of these stakeholders and community members to undertake this project. We want everybody to see themselves in the process and to see themselves in the plan. So we're sort of at the center there, the consultant team, but we're working closely with Vince and his colleagues in the Natural Resources Department. The Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, as I mentioned, is the steering committee that we're partnering with throughout. And then town boards and committees like the planning board, we do see you as essential kind of implementation and community leaders in this process, and then finally the general public. And the information is really flowing both directions. So we're providing information from our analyses out to the community, and then the community is providing information to us that we incorporate into our process. And as I said, everyone has a role to play in making this project a success. So now just a bit more detail on our community engagement approach and how we'll be working with the community as we move forward. So we've already, undertaken quite a bit of conversations. I think we're up to 15 or 16 meetings now with boards, commissions, departments, and organizations. So we've begun to, I think draw out some central themes about what we're hearing and where we really need to focus. These are some of the findings that we've heard so far. One is that the process be based on the latest climate science and robust technical analysis, but that it also be driven by extensive community engagement of the entire island, including both seasonal and year-round residents. The plan needs to lead to clear, actionable, and prioritized solutions, and be comprehensive in scope, leading to solutions that are both for built and natural resources. We need to provide recommendations for both nature-based and gray infrastructure, as well as policy and regulatory changes. We want to provide detailed guidance on implementation, including near-term pilot projects, recognizing that pilot projects can be an important way to catalyze future investment and kind of prove concepts. Seek to provide co-beneficial infrastructure. I think this gets to the notion of value creation, that unit benefit or infrastructure that only has one benefit or only provides a risk reduction, only serves a risk reduction purpose is not necessarily a successful outcome as far as we're concerned, and that's something we've been hearing from the community. And then finally, honoring and protecting the unique built-in natural heritage of Nantucket, that we really need to be thinking about what makes Nantucket special, and how we can align both solutions and the pathway towards resilience and adaptation with that heritage. Our community engagement approach is informed by a set of principles. These are the values that we'll bring to each of the activities that we have. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, we really are striving to make our process as wide as possible and include those who may not have been included in previous climate resilience planning processes. Fostering optimism and energy, I think, there's a lot going on in the world today. I don't think I need to remind anybody of that. And the work of or rather the climate change itself can be a rather kind of negative thing to confront. And so we choose to approach the work of resilience planning with optimism because at its root, we think that to plan for the future, you need to be optimistic. Aiming for co-creation, this is very much about, making sure that as we work with the community, we're not just reporting out findings, but we're actually building capacity and looking to devise solutions in partnership with the community. And then finally, in the context of COVID-19, public health and safety is a central focus. So we will, for the time being, and perhaps depending on how things go, the duration of the project, be hosting our engagement virtually, although we'll certainly be looking for opportunities to do in-person engagement should conditions allow. And I won't read these in depth. The community engagement plan, a detailed document that walks through all of this, is posted on the Coastal Resilience Plan website. But just as kind of an overall statement on our goals, we are looking for diversity. We're looking to empower the community and foster collaboration. We do want to have lots of different ways for people to get involved because in the context of COVID, we're finding through this project and other projects that it may be easier for people to join a meeting, but it can be harder to get kind of the detailed, valuable input that we might have been able to get if we were to seated at a table together at a community workshop. So providing a lot of different ways for people to provide input. And then finally, cultivating champions. I think we want to be sure that when this process ends, that the community is empowered to carry forth the work. And just a little bit more about our approach here. So we have kind of different strategies and different approaches. We're trying to achieve both kind of broad outreach and then also deep outreach. So broad outreach is really targeting as many people as we possibly can to inform them about the process and collect their perspectives. But maybe a less level of engagement than those who we really see are central to the implementation of the plan. And those are the stakeholders that will want to engage multiple times in very detailed conversations over the course of the project. And this is just a list, our inventory of stakeholders. This is a living list, and certainly we won't go through all of this. These are listed in the community engagement plan or summarized in the community engagement plan, I should say. And we're working closely with a number of these groups through our phase 1 listening tour. Here are some of the organizations that we've met with during this first phase. I think we have a few more presentations to go, including the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee tomorrow and HDC on Friday afternoon. And then I'll have to check with Vince. We may have 1 or 2 more meetings to go, but we're wrapping up this first phase. If you're not on this list, it doesn't mean we don't want to speak to you or that you're not important. It's just a way of kind of breaking down our focus on engagement as we move through the process. And these are the groups that we see as having the most kind of value to add early in our process, but we'll be reaching out to other groups as well. And certainly everyone is invited to join all the community-wide open houses. I mentioned before the need to have a really wide toolkit. These are some of the tools that we'll be using, from the website and virtual meetings to social media to public open houses. And even the idea of kind of pop-up meetings or quote unquote meetings in a bag, where we're providing information to community members and organizations to host meetings where we're not actually present, but that there's the toolkit there to have a discussion around coastal resilience planning on Nantucket, and then provide that feedback to Vince and our project team. And then, this is more specifically what we've been working on so far. So we have launched the town's website. I do invite you to check it out and learn a bit more about the process. We also have a short contact information collection form. We'd love to be able to assemble a really robust email list so we can make sure that we're keeping people up to date on our process. So for anyone listening, please do fill that out. And then we have other kind of mapping and survey tools that we'll be working with as we move through here. And schedule, we're now wrapping up phase 1, moving into the phase 2 workshops and surveys here in January and February, and then have later kind of phases of public engagement in the spring and summer. And then last slide, just or second to last slide, just in terms of next steps, community engagement continues. We are now in the risk and vulnerability assessment phase, and so are actively working on that and look forward to reporting the results of that work in our mid-project report in March. And then out of that, we'll begin developing kind of preliminary resilience and adaptation scenarios for further discussion with the community this spring. And that's the end of the presentation. These are some questions that we've been asking each of the groups that we've spoken with. I'm happy to answer any questions as well, but I think what we really like to understand are, from the planning board's perspective, what are your primary goals and objectives? What legacy would you like the project to leave behind? What do you really not want to see come out of this process? And then critical elements, things that have been on your mind that you'd like for us to know. And that includes pitfalls, things we should avoid, and things that that might be on or off the table. So solutions that you'd really like us to be considering and evaluating, and then other solutions that right now are not going to really be viable for Nantucket. So with that, I will. I guess I'll stop sharing my screen.
That's good, Trevor, because the way we usually proceed is to go round robin to be sure everybody gets a chance to give their thoughts, and I'd like to do that if you can keep the display available in case someone wants to put it back up, that would be good. But otherwise, I think it probably makes more sense to let people maybe voice their comments and then circle back to some of your questions, if you don't mind. We've had a number of other things cancel on this meeting, so we have time enough to pursue this. I thought maybe I'd start with Fritz, since you're a member of the crack. Are there things you want to bring out or comment on at this point?
No, I mean, I've had through the committee and the work that we've been doing, the meetings that we've had, I've had the opportunity to see the presentation, provide the input and get answers to the questions that I had initially. I think it's probably more important that the other members of the planning board and alternates who haven't seen this to be able to ask the questions that they may have. I think we just need to focus that ultimately, I mean, we are the planning board. One of the duties of the planning board, responsibilities are to make proposals for changes to the zoning bylaw. And so I presume that somewhere in the outcome of this report, there will be recommendations, or we will be considering potential changes to the zoning bylaw to enhance and further coastal resilience through zoning regulation. But that's not anything we have gotten into, and it may be premature at this meeting to get into that issue. But certainly that's how I see the focus really of this committee, of this board, how it will ultimately become involved in the coastal resilience process.
And just before we go to others' comments, in keeping with what Fritz said, to Trevor and Vince, you're aware that we're doing our level best in the face of COVID to try to kick off the master planning process for our next comprehensive plan, and that's been slowed down, unfortunately, because of staffing limitations and COVID constraints and things like that. But those are things we'll definitely find germane to fit in some of what you're doing. The other thing, when it's my turn to question, I'm going to pursue is will be also having some responsibilities to do with the Harbor Place project proposal that I think raises crucial questions about coastal resiliency and the harbor and plans for the harbor that I know Vince, from having corresponded with Jeff Carlson about it, that is something you're trying to get off the ground, but that too has been delayed. So there's a number of things, as Fritz said, that will undoubtedly be coming back to. Should we just go across the circle here, or who wants to go first among board or alternates? Nat, you're always good.
Yeah, I'll say a couple things. Vince, I just have something for you real quick, and thank you, Trevor. You did a great job last Wednesday. I watched you. I've never seen you in my life. You did a great job with your presentation, just like tonight. Vince, I know you talked to Joe Farrell, because I talked to him the other day about his little modules and going to try to help him with those little trailer things he's got there. I sort of thought of him when you said, when Trevor said pilot projects, and this has been going on for years with him trying to get something to work in Nantucket to try to see what could happen with those cement modules to sort of steer the sort of build up of sand by nature.
Yep.
Nature would build it up like when a ship washes ashore and all of a sudden you got this gigantic amount of sand building up by itself, you know. Yep. I mean, I know you've seen those pictures, so I was just curious, is he being engaged in this conversation with Trevor or this group or whatever we're doing?
I am working with Joe Farrell myself. As yet, he's not come to be part of the CRP. So just to give some background on where we are with Trevor, on where we are with Mr. Farrell and his work, it would have been about this time last year. I first spoke to him on the phone and had our first conversations about how we could start progressing his work. So in some ways, we're further down the road with Joe Farrell's project and his ideas than we would be if it was to be included within the CRP. So we're kind of ahead on that front. And what we're doing at the moment, I am Nantucket Conservation Association. It's a local homeowner group in the Nantucket area. It's a combination of two previous homeowner groups. So they came together to have one big group. They have an erosion subcommittee, and the erosion subcommittee, I'm working extremely closely with them. And what I've been trying to do is advise them and trying to move them along and trying to help them move forward. What they need to get the application in is some background information and some studies to say how it would work. Then just supporting information. Then all he's got to do is put in an application to CONCOM, Mass DEP, which is kind of the same application, and also to US Army Corps of Engineers, because it's in the intertidal, it's in state water effectively. He needs to put in an application with US Army Corps of Engineers. And then it's just up to the planning process to go through. He's got a professor called Professor Gary Zerillo in Florida, who's doing the background work, getting the data together. And if everything goes smoothly, there's somewhat of a chance that he might have an application in well before the summer and well before the delivery of this project.
Okay. And a follow-up, Madam Chair, if I can, to Vince and Trevor. I'm not sure who is the best. I think Vince probably is the best one to answer. When you talk about island-wide, thank God that's the most important part of it all, because we have a tendency to sort of, with all the erosion projects that go on at different properties, it's all about that property instead of being about the island. And I've always said nature doesn't know property lines and taxes and anything. It's just sand and whatever. So I talked to Dave Fransura about this a few years ago. Is there a way, Vince, that Nantucket itself, the town, through the select board, Concom, I'm not sure exactly how this would work, could apply for a permit for a certain amount of, a certain scope of work for the island, for what, say, so each thing doesn't have to have its own slow, cumbersome project. We'll all be a lot older when we start doing stuff. And that's my concern about this, is the time it's going to take to do stuff without having a way to sort of have a I don't want to say an open-ended permit. I don't mean that. I mean like something that has specific things that are allowed. Is that possible?
Not in my experience, I'm sorry to say, Nat. I love the question. I really wish it was a thing. The only time I've come across combined permits before is when I was doing research for dredge plans, so that you might be able to propose to dredge 8, 10, 20 something different sites all at once. But on terrestrial habitats on land, it's property by property. You only get away with that because you're in kind of marine waters. I really wish it was a thing. So then there's another thing that you kind of raised that I kind of want to answer as well. So how are we going to do it? And because you said it, and you're right. Nature doesn't know boundary lines. We made those ourselves. So how do we make sure that whatever project we do matches up with a neighboring property? That's kind of a developing question, and something we're going to have to come up with an answer with. I don't mean to use the downtown area as an example, but there is one in the downtown area, and we need to be aware of it and trying to avoid potential similar things happening in the future. On Easy Street, there's a bulkhead wall. Next door to it, the land bank decided to kind of match the height of it for only part of it, and then step down for the rest of it. That's a wave attenuation wall that got stepped across, not a flood barrier wall, just so everyone knows. Stop large waves impacting further inland. Long story short, it really should have matched the same height as the town wall all the way across, so that if we want to try and do something like that, say pick another site in a town-owned place, Surfside, with hypothetical structure there, and then it goes across onto private property. How do you make it on private property so that it'll be continued? And hopefully we might come up with some town bylaw or planning ordinance, something to that effect, whereby there's a trigger, something like you do some kind of upgrades to your property, you exceed 50% of the value of the property. Just like with raising a house under FEMA standards, the same kind of trigger applies there. Then you have to match town standards for the resilience in the coastal area. Hopefully something like that might work. It's going to take a lot of planning. That's only just one suggestion. There's other ways that this might be applied as well. But you're looking at some kind of policy or legal framework in order so that people can match the town plans. And would there be a financial support available for it is another question.
Thank you, Vince, for that. I appreciate your efforts, and thank you, Trevor. I'll leave it to everyone else now. I have other things, but we have plenty of time. It's fine.
Nat, feel free to call me.
I know. I've got to come visit you sometime down there before it washes away.
Dave Iverson.
No, I don't really have any questions. I'm excited to kind of follow the process and see where it takes us.
Okay, John Trudell.
Not too many questions. I think it's really interesting. As Chris said, it's probably premature right now in the early stages, and with the different zonings that we might have to consider and change. I guess Nantucket is very unique, being an island 30 miles out as compared to coastal shorelines in North Carolina or South or Florida or something like that. And what are the measures that would be taken in the different areas? But I guess really what it boils down to is one basic question is, instead of having us as a town and boards think of the goals that we want, I guess what we really should be asking are what are the realistic goals that we should consider and where? from what you all are finding through your research and studies and discussions with other committees. So I'm really going to take a backseat and really think about what you're going to suggest to us, being the experts and collecting the data, and what we should look at and consider, but also what are the ramifications as far as the monies and what are needed to make protections, because I always thought that Mother Nature is going to do what Mother Nature is going to do, and all we're doing is kind of putting a Band-Aid on it until it figures out how we can work around what we put a Band-Aid on. So I'd really be interested in what your expertise would suggest as realistic goals.
Vince or Trevor, do you feel like that's a question you want to get into now, or not till you've done more work here?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I can't. We're not at the point yet where we're ready to start presenting those realistic solutions. But I think that point is well made, and I think it's somewhere that we're going to get, and that's very very much how we see our role is kind of starting at the highest level with understanding the kind of community goals and priorities and outlining a long-term vision, but then beginning to narrow the field of options down to, really down to like the, district and site scale. What are the suite of tools that will allow us to, feasible tools that will allow us to accomplish those goals. So we will get there and look forward to having that conversation when it's time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Campbell.
Hi, thank you, Judith. So I've really been doing a lot of listening. I had read over the presentation in our packet earlier this weekend, so I had some other, my thoughts were heading in a different direction. I'd just sort of like to reinforce Fritz's idea on the zoning. As some of you know, I've been concerned for quite a while the amount of development that is occurring in some of our buffer zones, the Brant Point area, all the low-lying, what I consider sort of sponge areas that go out into quays, and then like we're even looking at something on Sheep Pond Road, which has been a big erosion area over the years. And so I'm concerned about construction that's occurring in these what are going to be which are now very sensitive areas, but we're sort of pretending maybe they're not. And I sort of feel like the swimming pool thing, like if you make propose a zoning change, everybody's going to run out and, put up their houses in all of these, sensitive areas before we're able to solidify a plan. So I have a little bit of concern around that. The other thing, I just was wondering whether, have realtors, the real estate group, been, part of your outreach program? Because it seems to me, over the years here, that real estate and contractors, that's our main economy right there, is selling land, developing land. That's it. And I feel like that group should be, as a group, should be in the beginning, brought in the beginning of these plans, because we really need, the island really needs their engagement, positive engagement, to be on board with some of the suggestions that are going to be put forward, because they're not all going to result in an ever-growing purse for realtors and contractors, I think. And I think they could have some positive effects on that. Even now we're selling property, and then as if, I don't know who's telling these people that you should buy that. But anyway, I don't want to get into that. that's really a concern I have, is that the real estate being a close partner in the development of these plans, as well as, well, I was going to sort of get into some of the tension issues, because there seem to be quite a few tension issues around those with the means, the material means to build in these sensitive areas in order to have their, water views and things like that. Their desire to do that seems to be in tension with the island's desire to protect itself from rising seas and increasing storms, which thankfully we haven't seen this winter, but we're getting the erosion nonetheless. So those were my main thoughts. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Let's see, David Callahan, would you like to comment? And then I think Stephen Welch, you're up after that, and then me.
I'm thrilled to see that it's island-wide, because I think that's crucial to doing it. I originally thought, when I first heard of this, it would be in the core district, that kind of stuff. So that I'm very happy by that. I think there's some problem areas that I'd like to bring up, but not here. I'll email them to you and do that, because I think it's a better way to do it. Otherwise, it's a great presentation. Very nice to listen to. Thanks for the time.
Stephen Welch.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So, excuse me, yeah, just very broadly, agree island-wide solution and the partnerships that are required will be important elements in the success. I think it's a great presentation. There's a lot of really good material that's been posted on the website, the town's website. I think very broadly in the area of adaptation, the retreat, accommodate, and I think it's protect, come with an added challenge for our community versus other communities, which is, this is no secret, the aesthetic and historic sensitivity, in particular for zoning and building codes. And I know no one has suggested telephone peer foundations or anything like that, but those are solutions that are used in other communities that would not even be part of the really fine-tuned type of considerations we would need in the historic district. On the matter of zoning, I think I'd suggest solutions, when we get to that point, there may be particular solutions that are permissive in a highly targeted way, but that sunset, so that this would help incentivize particular actions and kind of bring about change more quickly than would be required. Otherwise, probably most successful in the severe and high risk areas. And that kind of segues into my last point, which is the costs involved. So anything we can be doing as a community to be partnering, not only with solutions to come up with solutions that work for the community, but partnering in a way that the regulations incentivize private individuals investing their own funds. Because I think one of the problems with prioritization will be the cost and funding sources that are required to implement things. So, clearly there's a lot of work to do, but we've got some great people at the helm and committees involved. And if I haven't said it, I think it's just a great, interesting effort. And I look forward to hearing more and being involved. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. Anybody feel the need to speak again? Otherwise, I'd like to just speak as a member of the board. Vince?
Thank you. I just wanted to say to David quickly, David Callahan and everyone, there's no chat feature. Normally I put my email address in the chat feature. You can go through Megan Trudell or Leslie Snell or just vmurphy@nantucket-ma.gov, the usual email address, just with vmurphy at the start, or just go through Meg. And if she feels like sending my email to anyone, please do.
Megan, maybe you could send that board an alternate kind of as a follow-up, so they've got it in front of them. Yeah. I've got a lot of questions and comments, but I'll try to limit them to two areas. One is, I wondered, I think this may be also to Fritz as well as Vince and Trevor. I did the survey that you had put out, and I found it to be a frustrating, to my mind, unsatisfactory survey because it primarily went over things that we've been surveyed on before, having to do with electric cars and one thing or another. And I thought it really didn't at all get to what I thought was the point here, having to do with sensitive areas and regulation of those areas is needed. So my question is on that, did the survey reflect what the real focus is? If so, I feel like we're getting mixed messages and mixed expectations arise as a result. And if not, maybe you're going to do a subsequent survey, but I felt like I fear I've seen enough plans, hazard mitigation plan, and one thing or another that we do this kind of thing and it seems like it's the same drill again and again, and we never move forward in a meaningful way. Here, I think we really have some imperatives that we can't afford to not get to the point sooner rather than later. So I don't mean that to be unkind. It just, I care about it. I did the survey. What I came away with was they don't care at all about the real issues. They don't care what people think about. And if that's the way things are, I think you need a course correction pretty early on here, in my personal opinion. Any comment on that? If not, just I'll let that sit there for you to reflect on.
I did have, yeah, so just a little bit of background. The HMP happened almost 2 years ago. I think it was accepted in April 2019. And what that was, that had a number of outcomes, and it had a number of ranked outcomes, things that were, you know, necessities or long-term requirements and that kind of thing. So that it had a ranked necessity to it. Some of the early things that came out of it, and I think priority number 2, if I remember rightly, was the need for a coastal resilience plan. So the HMP is working by virtue of the fact we're getting a coastal resilience plan. There was other things that in the HMP that either got done or getting done. Things like looking at the bridges in Nantucket.
Vince, I don't mean to contest you unfairly, but I went to those hearings. I watched that. In my opinion, that was a useless report, and the only reason the crack effort moved ahead in any way was that there were citizens who stood up and said this is insufficient.
Yep.
And there really needs to be some action that's meaningful here. So I know that was before you were in this role, but just for what it's worth, there's other perspectives, and I certainly wouldn't want to give credit to that document as spurring any of this. It was rather that the inadequacy of that effort was what spurred it, in my experience.
A point taken, and I will also gratefully credit the Nantucket Coastal Conservancy for pushing the issue and making sure that a lot of things were fulfilled, including getting a coastal resilience planner and a coastal resilience plan underway. That they were instrumental behind it. So credit to them. As to the content of the questions, I think that might be slightly more for Trevor, is it?
Yeah, maybe there might be another survey that you're referring to, Judith, because we have not launched a survey as part of this plan yet. We've developed just the contact information form. That's not, you know, I wouldn't consider that a survey. It's really an opportunity for people to let us know that they want to be involved in the process. We will be launching a survey about related to the Coastal Resilience Plan down the road, but you mentioned a question about electric cars. That's not related to our process.
I think I figured that one out. So I'm sorry, there's no one here to represent them. Remain have brought together a design challenge, and they launched their survey very recently, within the last couple of days, I understand. That might be what you're looking at.
This was at least a month or 6 weeks ago, for what it's worth, but put that aside. Let me shift the point a bit, that there's been a million surveys, okay? And if you really want citizen input, you need to be clear about how this is different. You need to really have some sense about what it is we're trying to find out or expect to the public, because if it's just kind of feel good, we touch base, we asked your opinion, and now we'll go on our merry way, you're not going to accomplish the goals you set forth in the proposal as you've laid it out in Trevor's slides.
Okay, so let's just kind of look further down the road. The kind of things that we'll hopefully see coming from the Coast Resilience Plan. There's going to be a lot of engineering type things. They're going to be a combination of potentially traditional infrastructure with hopefully an emphasis on grey and green infrastructure. Green infrastructure is obvious. Things like planting earthen banks, that kind of stuff to slow down erosion or limit flooding. But then grey infrastructure is a combination of traditional infrastructure and green infrastructure. We'll hopefully see plenty of that. There's going to be policy recommendations come from this plan as well. And there's also going to be a lot of education and that kind of thing. So the education is something you might have seen before, but we need to try and get as many people on board as possible. So when we're looking at
Vince, in that regard, is it your expectation there'll be particular recommendations to use Campbell's example, say Brant Point or Nantucket, or areas that are really seeing substantial risk at the moment? Will they be a focus for particular recommendations or particular regulations?
A simple answer is yes.
And that's part of the initial report that's to be expected?
I don't know. That'll be part of the final report in September. And part of the reason we're asking these questions now is to gauge, well, what would be acceptable to the public? What are the expected outcomes, which is one of the purposes of being at this and attending other committees and boards and commissions to get their feedback.
Thank you, then. If I could, then, I don't want to prolong this. My secondary question concerns specific to the downtown. The other big thing that we were going to have on our agenda tonight that have held off is Harbor Place, and Select Board and others are very eager to move that ahead. I don't see how informed decisions, design decisions, and other things can be made without the completion in advance of the resiliency work of the Harbor Master Plan and things of that sort. I had email correspondence with Jeff, and I understand that with COVID and everything, the Harbor Master Plan is put off yet again. So I'm just curious how these different planning and development initiatives, how they relate to each other, whether you would anticipate there'll be anything by September that might have a bearing on that part of the downtown where Harbor Place is proposed.
Yeah, I'm extremely interested in Harbor Place and extremely interested to see what we might be able to do to increase resilience in that area. It's in mostly in flood zone AE9 and sections that are in AE10. So you know it's and it's got velocity zones right next to it. You've got to be extremely careful about what you put in there. I'm hoping that there'll be plenty actions that we can put in place in that area. And then the other part of your question of how this Coast Resilience Plan can accommodate other plans that are as yet not complete. Sadly, you're right. Jeff is giving you the same information he's giving me. There's going to be plans that are deferred because of COVID, but they're just updates to already existing plans, and we already know some of those existing plans have shortfalls, pretty major ones and pretty well documented ones. So you could make a fairly educated guess as to what an updated Harbour Master Plan might say, and then actually make recommendations for what might go into it through the CRP. So it's a combination of using the existing Harbour Management Plan and what you might expect in the next one.
Thank you. I'll stop with that. Thank you. I don't mean to be critical, just I think those are really important questions. And you came for feedback, so I figured you wanted it. I'll take you at your word.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say to us before you take off and we move on with the agenda?
No, I would just say thank you so much for your feedback. It's, no, we don't take anything as criticism. It's all very valuable to us. And I think Judith, your point about the amount of planning that's happened and not wanting to have the same conversations again gets to part of the challenge of doing this project for us will be devising a lot of different ways for people to be engaged so that those who have not been part of a process before can be brought up to speed and brought into the conversation, maybe for the first time, and those who have been, having this conversation for decades have an opportunity to speak with us, about, more informed concerns that they may have. So that's on our radar, and I do very much appreciate your bringing that up tonight. And thank you to the rest of the board members as well.
Thank you very much, Trevor. I think the other thing I would just leave you with is we're going to have to be doing survey work about the master plan and do community outreach about the master plan. So for all this lappage of what's happened in the past and what's happening with you, there's another chapter coming right behind, which is the master planning. So I know natural resources has its own obligations and all, but it really would be so helpful and so beneficial for the citizens if, say, you find who are emerging champions with interests, or how have you been able to make contact with diverse viewpoints or things like that, and to really work by sharing some of those insights with PLUS so that when we're able to actually get going more substantially with those kinds of things, we can be as seamless as possible. So the town is acting as one and the citizens don't feel like they're being whipsawed one way or another. And then we also have the small area plan work that NAD and PETC has to work on, and that includes areas like Brand Point and Nantucket and Surfside and so on. So it'll be important insofar as you're getting targeted planning done in particular areas, that we stay on top of what you're coming up with as it emerges, so that we can reinforce and work with that again, because the citizens deserve kind of one voice, one government, and not to get pulled all different ways and have to go to multiple meetings and say the same thing over and over. So really appreciate your consideration of that.
Great. Can I make one request, please?
Please.
As the plan is being developed, there's going to be some things that are going to be of particular interest to the planning board, whether it be new versions of or updated versions of a policy or a bylaw or a planning regulation, or even a physical project. Would it be okay if we, through Fritz and through Megan, if we were to try and return with
we would love
some ideas before the final plan?
That would be wonderful.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Mary Longacre, if you're out there without your name on the screen, thank you too. We know you've come to our meetings and NPEDC meetings before, and we appreciate all the hard work everybody's doing. Okay, we ready to move on to our next items?
Thank you, guys.
Good night, Vince and Trevor. Thank you.
Thank you for all the work.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're continuing any discussion of minutes. I don't think we have to do anything to act on that, but we all understood that from Megan's prior comments.
Right. Yep. She said
now,
to continue, so.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to continue the minutes to next meeting if we need a motion for that.
Okay, sir, second.
I'll second.
Fritz seconded. Roll call, Nat.
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Okay, second dwellings, we have a number of these. I want to thank Campbell for raising questions by email to Megan. That really helps us keep on track and get answers. And if others have questions in future, that's a good way to raise them in advance so we can all get our questions answered. Is there anybody that wants to pull something off this consent agenda list at this point? Does anybody need to recuse on any of these matters?
I need to recuse on, 0083 and 0084, Madam Chair.
Okay, thanks. Dave
Uh,
Iverson.
Question, and it might be a typo or a paste error on 38 Prospect. You just said the entrance on Darrymore in the second paragraph. I just want to make sure that that's just a simple typo.
Yes, that is a simple typo. Sorry about that. It should
Oh,
read
no
North
worries.
Mill Street.
Megan, you.
Good catch.
Yeah.
All right. You get to read. You get to be the
I've been
proofreader on the next round of minutes, Dave. You watch out. Okay. Anybody want to pull anything for plenary discussion? Otherwise, let's take everything that Nat can participate in first, and then we'll go back and take those that Nat recused on. So Nat, you said you're recusing on 81, 82, and 84?
No, on 83 and 84.
83 and
Excuse me.
84, okay.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
we're going to now act on PBDW 2021-01, 80, 81, 82, 85, and 86.
Correct.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve those, Madam Chair.
John and Fritz seconds. Roll call. Let's see, start with John.
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
who am I missing? Fritz,
Aye.
yes. Judith, aye. Okay, now let's take up 83 and 84. These are ones Nat is recused. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, Madam Chair.
Thanks, John. Second,
Second.
Fritz seconds. Roll call, John,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Judith, aye. Thank you. A&R plans, one of these is withdrawn, number 33 Hinsdale Road. Does anybody need to recuse on any other?
Madam Chair, do we have to make a motion to withdraw without prejudice for the 33 Hinsdale?
Okay, we'll do that first. I was just trying to do does anybody recuse first, but nobody has to recuse on Hinsdale, so let's take that one. This is number 2021-1-123. John, I take it you'd make the motion.
That's my motion.
I'll second.
And Nat,
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call, John,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Judith. So that's withdrawn without prejudice. So among the remainder, is there any that anyone needs to recuse on? Is there anyone wants to pull for discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 120, 121, 122, 124, and 125.
Thank you. Nat, were you about to?
Second. Yeah,
Okay.
second.
Roll call, John,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Judith, aye. Okay, previous plans, number 19-19 Bradbury Holdings LLC, 10.5 Cherry Street. This is a minor modification. Megan, would you like to say a word?
Sure. And John Brusher is the applicant's representation who can answer any more detailed questions, but they're just requesting to reconfigure the driveway to a configuration that is allowed under the bylaw in the zoning district to do two side by side. The decision just grabbed language from just the usual second dwelling letter that states the width can't exceed 15 feet, which in this case it will be a 20 by 20 foot to accommodate the two side by side parking spaces. So they need that language changed in the decision.
John, did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's exactly right. I mean, that's all that it is.
Okay. Is there further discussion? This is not one, since it's a minor modification, it's not a public hearing, so we can just have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with the finding. Go ahead now.
No, go ahead, John.
All right.
John,
I'll make a motion to approve a minor modification with the finding that the amendment of the to the previously granted special permit does not materially affect the findings and conclusions upon which the planning board's previous decision to approve the development was based, and therefore shall be allowed without a public hearing.
okay, Nat, were you getting ready to second?
Second. Yep,
Okay.
second.
Any discussion? Roll call, John,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Judith, aye. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Following, now this part of the meeting for anybody who's listening in, this is where we move to public hearing. So if you want to speak to any of these matters, first of all, bear in mind that we had a number of these that were carried forward that we won't be taking up tonight. So just want you to be aware of that, and you can pull the most recent updated agenda from the town website if you'd like, but we'll call on you to raise your hand, and Megan will call on you to comment if there's anybody who chooses to do that. 2020-08-66 Gray Lady Marine, 13 Arrowhead Drive. This is
Make a motion to withdraw without prejudice, Madam Chair.
I'll
Thank
second.
you. Thank you. Nat moved, John seconded. Is there discussion? Roll call vote. Nat,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Dave, aye.
Aye.
And Judith, aye. Next one listed is 10A and 10B Cliff Road. We had a request from the applicant and from the applicant to continue that. So that's to be continued till February. Is that right, Megan?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Make a motion to officially continue 0089 till February 8th.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
Fritz seconds. Roll call. Nat,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Judith, aye. Next is also a request continued. This is 2020-1194 Nantucket Boys and Girls Club, 69 Sparks Avenue. One that they're still working on. I'm sure you remember that from last time. I'm glad they're continuing so they can get it resolved. Is there a motion to continue? Dave? Dave,
Can we make a motion to continue both that and Mayflower Circle at the same time?
sure.
Yes. Yes. I'll second that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Roll call for those two matters. Dave,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
did I get everybody? Dave Iverson.
Yes, you got me. Aye.
Okay, Judith, aye. Thank you. Let's see, the next is, this one is still active, PLSP 2020-12-97, John G. Wolford, trustee, 20 Matacacham Valley Road. Megan, you want to say a word on this?
Sure, and Jay Maroney is here to represent the applicant and can give you a detailed overview. In the short, they're requesting a waiver of the 20% size differential between the primary dwelling and the secondary dwelling. And I think Jay could probably further elaborate as to the reasons why.
Jay, would you tell us more about this, please?
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thanks, Megan, for the introduction. Like Megan said, we're just applying for a waiver to the 20% rule, which is contained in the bylaw, section 139, Tech 2, definitions for secondary dwellings, which require that the difference between a primary and secondary dwelling be 20%. In this case, because of erosion on the lot, it's no longer really possible for them when they move and renovate the structure to maintain that 20% split. It would cause, if we made them move the property, the primary dwelling, it would cause an overage of ground cover. And basically what they're trying to do is just get right to the ground cover maximum of 3%.
Are there questions
Yeah.
for Jay?
Yeah. This is
Questions?
this one might as well be a resiliency. Nope.
I didn't plan that.
The board, if the board has questions, but then I need to open the public hearing in case there's anybody who wants to speak to this matter. Megan, are you seeing anybody?
Yes, Emily Molden with her hand raised.
Okay, welcome, Emily.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. I did just have a couple of comments about this application. I certainly understand the difficulties that the property owner faces with erosion on the South Shore there. But I guess in light of especially the presentation that the planning board just had and the dialogue on the coastal resiliency plan, I would ask the board to really consider this type of situation where, I mean, all of the boards and commissions on island are going to have to figure out how to start to address these coastal properties in a way that's more sensitive to these resiliency issues. And in this case, I think you have an example where someone is requesting to build structures in a larger footprint than maybe the existing circumstances in coastal erosion allows. And while that's kind of creates some conflict with the existing bylaw, I think that the board should really consider whether it is appropriate to allow those waivers that will allow larger structures and more infrastructure on these lots that maybe need to be considered a little bit differently than properties that are further inland. So I recognize that the erosion is a challenge, but I think that there are options for the property owner to construct and deal with their primary and secondary dwelling in a way that still conforms to the zoning. And maybe that just means some slightly smaller structures on a property that's facing erosion like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Madam Chairman.
Who is that? I'm sorry.
It's Jay. Sorry, ma'am.
Jay. Oh, okay. Thank you.
I just wanted to say I appreciate Emily's comments, but we're not trying to do anything to get around zoning in this instance. We're just trying to get to 3% ground cover, which is the proper allowed zoning. It's just the question of the size differential between the structures. in theory, we could demolish all the structures and build this size footprint. We're not trying to change our allowed ground cover. We're just looking to change the ratio between the two structures. HDC will still have to approve, you know, the scale and bulk issues. But as far as the zoning issue that Emily raised, we're not asking to, you know, change the ground cover on the lot. It's simply the ratio between the structures.
So just to be sure I heard that, Jay, and to ask Megan if you want to comment on that as well. As I understand it, it's the proportionality between the two, the primary and the secondary. It's not creating a larger total footprint, but it's about trying to accommodate the two buildings. Is that correct, Megan?
Yeah, Madam Chair, that's correct. The applicant is not requesting to exceed the allowable ground cover in any way. They're just requesting for a reduction in the size differential. So the definition of secondary dwelling requires that one be 20% either smaller or larger than the other. And in this case, with the proposed addition, that wouldn't be possible. It will still be under the 3% allowed ground cover in the zoning district.
And are there constraints under the zoning bylaw about the usable square footage for these two buildings put together?
No, I mean, as Jay mentioned, they could, within their right, without seeking approval from the planning board, knock them both down and get to the 3% as a single dwelling. That would be allowed. It's just the differential that they're requesting relief from.
Thank you. Fritz.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand what's happening. So as I understand it, there are two dwellings, one at the close, I'll say closer to the water, which is the primary dwelling at this point. And then there is a secondary dwelling at the end of that driveway. And what they propose to do is to demolish the 900 square foot second dwelling and then build a larger dwelling closer to the road, which in fact would be, well, which would be larger, but would still be smaller than what is now the primary residence. Is that what's going on?
Partially, they're keeping the existing structure. They're just relocating it on the site.
Making it a little bit bigger.
And when they relocate it, they'd like to build an addition.
Got it.
Yeah.
So is that going to go ahead?
Go ahead, Fritz. I was going to say other questions from you, Fritz, or follow up.
No, I mean, I share Emily's concern, Emily Molden's concern. I mean, Matacasham is one of the areas on the South Shore that's seeing one of the most significant degrees of erosion. But you know, and I suppose if I were the one investing all of this money, I would be somewhat questioning why I would invest all the money given the amount of erosion that is certainly going to occur. But I guess that's not my call. So anyway.
Thank you. I think it does raise the question, the broader question Emily's raising, why it's imperative that CRAC's recommendations come forward soon, because I'm sure that this is not the only property owner who's trying to think ahead to what the risks are and what they can do about it. And I think our existing bylaws were not crafted deliberately to address these myriad of dimensions of erosion. Dave Iverson, then I think Campbell.
So, I know we've gone through this and I should know this, but limited bedrooms only by the size of their septic system, is that correct? on this piece of property. So yeah, I mean, it's just, the math is kind of overwhelming when you think of the size differential and that they're changing their secondary dwelling into something bigger than their primary. So basically they're gonna have two big buildings on this lot. And I get it with the ground cover. I just, I would urge them to think about what they're doing. If they're losing that much property every year, what's their building footprint gonna look like in another 5 or 10 years? And then all of a sudden you've got all this ground coverage on a lot that it overwhelms. So I feel for their problem, and I guess if this is the way they want to do it, as long as we don't go over the 3%, it's going to be two big buildings on a small lot in the end, I think.
And Megan, is this something that has to go to Concom, or Jay, would you comment about where the buildings physically?
Yes, Madam Chair, it doesn't, it'll be outside the buffer for Concom. And, what part of moving the structures is to move the structure away from the erosion. So, and not build two big buildings, but two medium-sized buildings. I mean, this isn't trying to jam two giant houses on a lot. It's trying to, accommodate the homeowner. And these are structures that were built in 1970, and the one we're moving was built in 1955. So we are trying to be kind of good stewards, and we're not, it's on either side of this lot. There are actually quite large houses. And so, from the standard of review, we're not looking to do anything that is, outside of the harmony of the intent and purpose of the bylaw. We're just trying to look for a waiver of the 20% rule because of the erosion. And this is a landowner, a property owner who's had the lot for over 30 years. And basically, as their family dynamics have changed, that he now has a son and a daughter who both have families, and this is putting two houses that are going to accommodate those two families separately in what we feel is a very responsible, modest way. And like I said before, move the structure that was built in 1950 when this lot was a lot larger and move it away from the eroding area. So I'll pause.
Thank you. Campbell, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, so this is one of the properties that I was referencing earlier in my comments to the resilience presentation. Two of the things I appreciate is, one, they're moving the structure away from the bluff, which I think is a wise idea, obviously. And I really appreciate the reuse of as much of the existing building as they can. I have great appreciation for that. So just as one of the things that I get concerned about in the construction phase of these is when you start getting really large equipment on these properties, I think that it adds to the instability of the land in that area. So, if they can keep things sort of to smaller equipment, even if they're digging a basement, let's say, using smaller equipment to do that, I think would be beneficial to the erosion problem in the future. But that's just a thought from watching Baxter sort of implode on properties where extensive work was done with heavy equipment, and they'll lose 25 or 30 feet in a year in one storm even on that road. So that's just my thought. So I appreciate those two things, and I really appreciate Emily bringing up the resiliency issues. So thank you for your time.
Okay, Megan, is there anybody else in the public wanting to speak?
Not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make that motion.
Thanks, Nat. Second?
Second.
Fritz seconds. Roll call. Nat?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Okay, further discussion? If no further discussion, is there a motion? The staff report says there has to be a finding made that the request is consistent with the general purpose and intent of the bylaw.
I'll make that motion. I'll make the motion to approve this application, that it's consistent with the general purpose and intent of the bylaw.
Thank you, Nat. Second?
Aye.
John? Okay, roll call. Nat?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Judith? Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Emily. I'm sure we'll see more variations on this theme in days to come. Okay. 7 Milestone Crossing. This is PLSP 2020-12-100 and 2020-12, number 119, Mark Dawson Trust, FOG nominee trust, Dean Milestone Crossing. Megan, would you like to say a word?
Yeah, I would. Let's see, I'm sorry, I'm just reading one thing. I think I thought I forgot to add a condition, but it is in there. So I don't see the applicant on the Zoom call, but I will go ahead and provide you guys with an overview. This is a 2-part application. In short, the applicant wants to create a secondary residential lot, which is a covenant lot. But in order to do so, they must first amend the subdivision. The covenant lot will be, let's see, about 21,000 square feet, while the market rate lot will be just over 98,000 square feet. They would like waivers to allow the covenant lot to have a separate driveway access, as well as to waive the ground cover ratio, so long as the total ground cover of the 2 lots don't exceed what's currently allowed. This also will tie back to the subdivision request. Currently, the subdivision restricts access to Milestone Crossing only. The proposed driveway access for the covenant lot is going to be from Hinsdale. So I recommend, if you're inclined to approve that request, that the applicant may have to contribute grading to Hinsdale Road. I took a drive out there the other day and it's not in the best of condition. So let's see. So the 2 conditions being amended in the subdivision would be allowed for the further subdivision in order to create the covenant lot and to allow the access on Hinsdale Road. The second part of this is the special permit for the secondary lot, which is just the standard secondary lot special permit request with the standard conditions, just adding that one condition about grading Hinsdale Road from the driveway entry point down to Novadear Farm. Any questions?
I'm declaring the public hearing on this matter to be open, and Megan, will you remind people what they need to do if they want to speak?
Yeah, so for those already logged in, if you're here to comment on this application, you can just use the raise hand feature, and we can recognize you in the order in which you've raised your hand. If you're watching at home and wish to participate, there should be a link at the bottom of the YouTube stream, and you can register to participate. I see Emily with her hand raised.
Okay, Emily, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Emily Molden here again. I just had a question for clarification, and I apologize if this was stated or in the materials, but I know that in this subdivision, there were some lots that were restricted on not having secondary dwellings, but I presume that this one was permitted to have a secondary dwelling.
Yes, that's correct. And the second dwelling's already constructed and has been for some time.
Okay, thank you. But this was in the original subdivision permit, this was one of those that was allowed.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to this matter? I'm just catching the public first. Campbell, be right with
Okay.
I'm not seeing
Okay.
anyone else with their hand raised.
you. Campbell.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So there needs to be a waiver to the ground cover ratio, and I was just wondering what the purpose of that was.
So the lots are, my understanding, and speaking for the applicant who's not here, but my understanding is so that it can permit one of the two dwellings to make improvements in the future. So it won't exceed what's currently allowed. It's just
Right,
not restricting one of them to that percentage.
right.
Okay, great. I was just question.
Good question.
Madam
Okay,
Chair,
with the board,
do we have to-
John.
do we have to make any note as far as the tertiary, if they're going to be making this second dwelling into an affordable or a covenant, and then restricting the primary to just a tertiary, so that
Probably
they-
be a good idea. Megan, what do you think?
Oh, they
Yeah,
saw-
Madam Chair, through you, I think that's completely reasonable. That's typically a standard condition that we put on a secondary lot permit. It's in the recommended conditions that if the market rate lot may have the ability to come before the board for a second dwelling, but if so, it would have to be by the tertiary standards.
right, and that's really what I wanted to address.
Mhm.
Number 3, I think, on the conditions, on the suggested conditions.
John, you're suggesting that no tertiary be permitted?
No, I'm sorry.
Or that you
I
want to
just-
review it if there is?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the market lot has such a significant amount, and as Meg said, it's going to be restrictive not to have the second or tertiary anyway. But I just wanted to make note that the primary lot, even as large as it is, can only adhere to the tertiary size. You're not going to have another secondary dwelling that's going to be 20% of the main house. It could be restricted to just 650 total square foot of
So,
living space. Yeah.
Megan, do you think that's laid out sufficiently in the conditions, or do you think that should be clarified?
No, I mean, I think that's listed under the proposed condition number 3, and it's written how I typically would write it in a secondary lot special permit decision.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Okay. Others with,
Yeah, I just have a quick question, Madam Chair. Megan or Leslie, not sure who can answer this, but when these old subdivisions that had their own their own, you just mentioned earlier, some of the lots aren't even allowed to have a secondary. Megan, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so with that said, Leslie, I think you know what I'm thinking. Are they even allowed to have a tertiary by right without lifting some restriction for the whole place? I mean, this is sort of like the thing at 119 Eel Point, and some of this goofy stuff from the past pops up now, and we sort of think we're in 2021, but we're really not in some of these subdivisions. So I just thought I'd ask that before we approve something that can't really actually even happen.
So it depends on how the language was worded. Like for instance, on Essex, you all just considered one over there a few meetings ago. It
Right.
specifically said only one dwelling unit. So most of them don't use the language primary and secondary.
Right.
Yeah.
Didn't
So
come up with that yet.
by removing the prohibition of only one dwelling unit, you would in effect allow the tertiary if that's the way it's worded. And Megan may have it handy.
I do. I'll
Okay.
share my screen. Hold on.
Just for clarification, this is gonna pop up once in a while, so I thought I would make this
Yeah, so it
point.
does use the terminology
Good for-
secondary
thanks for raising
dwelling.
that, Nat.
It does say secondary dwelling here.
Okay, I see.
I didn't get it.
It went fast, Megan.
Yeah, that was quick, Megan.
I think there might be a delay.
No, she's quick and we're not so quick.
Speed reader.
That is probably true.
I love the old typewriter stuff. I love it.
Did I see something about the secondary dwelling be restricted to 800 square feet on the ground? Briefly, I don't know. I was speed reading.
Are we good with this screen share? Are we still reading?
6 secondary.
Yeah.
Number 7, all 6 secondary dwellings shall be limited to ground cover of 800 square feet.
Yeah.
Running for no less than 30 years. Okay, so that's the other piece, Leslie, correct? So 4 more years, this place is, regular zoning, correct?
When there's a condition in a subdivision approval, it runs forever. It doesn't expire in 30 years. Only the private deed restrictions expire in 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this case, that's a private deed restriction because it says 30.
It's a restriction that's imposed by the planning board. I mean, there should be a separate document where they granted enforcement of the restrictions to the board, and the board would have needed to accept that. I believe that did happen in Milestone Crossing, although there are others where it did not, but this one's a little bit newer.
Yeah.
So I just have a quick question on this then. Given that information and the secondary dwelling is being used in the covenant lot, the way I read that, so please correct me, is that any improvements or expansion of primary lot, the now market rate lot, would be just to the size of that structure, the square footage of the existing building could be larger, but not have a tertiary. Or that it would just be the.
Megan or Leslie?
There is a provision in the bylaw under the covenant lot creation that does state, and I can't recite the exact language, but it basically states that the newly created covenant dwelling is not subject to any of the restrictions that the secondary dwelling shall be held to. That said, maybe you want to condition it just not to allow the second dwelling by tertiary standards to avoid any issues that may cause in the future. That could be something that you could discuss.
Dave Callahan?
Megan, through you, Madam Chair, do you know what lot number this is?
If you give me a moment, I should be able to pull it up.
Because it said only lot 9 and 10 could use Hinsdale Road.
Yeah, it is one of the restricted lots. So that's the second piece of this. They are requesting access on Hinsdale Road. So for that condition to also be removed.
Didn't mean to open up a bunch of lawyer questions. I just wanted to kind of make sure that this is discussed because this isn't the first time that this has happened. So I thought
I don't think we appreciate it, Nat. That's really savvy to catch it in this area's had those questions come up.
We just, back, even though this was in 95, we used to restrict things in a weird way, even with these gigantic lots. And that's, we don't think that way today, but it matters if it's, the legal part matters regardless of what we think today. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm saying it.
Leslie, Dave Iverson.
Are we in the well recharge district?
I think this is outside of the wellhead.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to look at the GIS now to figure it out.
If I can just add, I mean, the applicant didn't request, unless I, in the application, so he didn't request anything for the tertiary dwelling. Can you all hear me? I can hear echo on my end. I think it would be appropriate to restrict against a tertiary dwelling because there aren't any other lots in the neighborhood that are allowed to have them. And if he wants to come back and ask for that, then he can do it, and it can be, you know, considered at a larger scale for the whole subdivision.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So Madam Chair, through you, what I'm hearing is
Yeah.
we'll revise the proposed condition 3 so that neither lot shall be allowed a secondary or tertiary dwelling without further relief from the board.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I sense everybody's agreeing to that. Yeah, very good work, everybody.
No, I have no issue with Hinsdale. I mean, anyone that wants to drive their car in Hinsdale, good luck. Good luck to you.
That's true.
No traffic jam.
That's right.
Okay, let me say we should close the public hearing if we're ready to do that.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, Nat moves, John seconds, roll call Nat,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Judith, aye. Okay, John, you seemed like you were moving toward a motion here. You got a solid motion too, so.
I hope so. I don't. Well, first, there's going to be two motions. One, I'm guessing to amend the subdivision and to include the grading of Hinsdale Road. So with the findings, there are two of them, and then that the proposed advances the intent of the zoning bylaw by creating housing for year-round residents, and two, that the request is consistent with the general purpose and intent of the bylaw. Also, the two the A&R subdivision amendments that read that the amendment is applicable to 17 Milestone Road only, and that the other condition in the original decision shall remain in full force and effect. And I think we're going to stop at that motion, and then we'll have another motion to correct the tertiary. Is that correct?
I believe that's what we agreed to.
So if that's okay for the first motion, that's
okay.
my motion.
Is there
I
a
think we should.
second? Is there a second to John's first motion?
Second.
Fritz, okay, roll call, John,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Judith. Okay, John.
Okay, and the second motion is for the secondary residential lot. I believe we need 4 out of 5 for this. And then with the findings and also that the 7 recommended conditions with the amended number 3 restriction not to allow a tertiary dwelling.
Or a secondary dwelling.
Or a secondary, sorry. And I think that's it. We already took care of the grading.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Second.
John moved, Nat seconded, roll call, John,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Judith, aye. All right, so the next is, they've asked to continue, so it's a motion to continue that we need. This is PLSP 2020-1298 5 Luff Road. You'll remember we had various comments that the mail didn't get through, or there were concerns and possible misunderstandings of what's proposed here, as Megan told us, and then the applicant indicated they'd like to continue. So is there a motion?
Madam Chair, did they give a time for the next meeting of February 8th or March?
Megan could tell us, I think.
February 8th, but Dawn's here to confirm. Correct.
Yes, correct. February 8th would be great.
Okay, and I'll make a motion to continue to February 8th.
Second.
Fritz,
give it to Fritz, Judith.
give it to Fritz, okay.
Oh, it's
Roll call, Judd,
Zoom.
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
yeah,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Judith, aye. Okay, we're working our way here. Next is 5 Bailey Road. We also get a request to continue on this one, right, Megan?
Yes, that's correct.
Until February?
Yep, until February.
You gotta
Motion
remember,
to
February
continue.
is gonna be extra long, so we're getting out early tonight, we hope, but be ready the next time. John, you move that.
Motion to continue to February 8th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Dave seconds, roll call, John,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Judith, aye. Okay, then we have two more only, but let's not go 2 hours for these last two. PLSP 2020-12-99, 8 SPR LLC, 8 Sheep Pond Road. I'm going to open the public hearing here just so that anybody who's interested, who might be named Emily Molden, can get ready. Okay, who wants to begin? Don, do you want to start, or do you want Megan to say grace first?
I think I can start unless Megan wants to jump in. This is another project on the south side of the island being affected by the coastal erosion. Currently, there are 2 existing driveways on the west side of the property toward the eroding bank. What we're proposing to do is take the driveway for the main house that's only 40 to 50 feet from the bank and bring it in from the east side of the property via the easement that was created back in around 2004, allowing these properties an alternative access.
Right.
So that's for the main house, and then for the guest house or secondary dwelling on the northwest corner, we're moving that driveway up about 50 or 60 feet and reconfiguring it and providing additional parking in the area of the guest house. That moves it about 60 feet further away from the road and coastal bank as well. There's a lot of detail shown in this plan. This is the same plan that we used to file with Natural Heritage for MESA. We're in the endangered species area, which is, they basically approved this plan. A lot of the driveway that's proposed for the main dwelling actually falls within existing cleared areas.
I was just about to ask.
Yeah, part of the stipulation on the easement itself is that each property can only have one access point. So, and they haven't exercised their right to use that easement on the east side yet, which they will be now. If at some time in the future, the driveway for the guest house has to be relocated, it would have to be combined with that driveway. So, and that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Don.
Yeah.
Let's see if the board has questions. Then, Megan, are there people out there wanting to speak?
Right now, I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, just a reminder, if you'd like to speak, raise your hand so Megan can call on you in due course. Campbell.
Well, I just have 2 questions. One, Don, I'm just wondering why you can't, for the guest house, use the north side to access that proposed gravel driveway parking area. Versus, it's one thing if it were staying the way it is, but since you're moving it and you're still on the most erosive side of the Sheep Pond Road, why aren't you looking at coming in off the north side, sort of in the area of that proposed shed, maybe put the shed, at the other end of the driveway? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, well, if we were to do that, for one thing, that there's topography in that area. It drops off. It's a pretty good grade, and it's all vegetated. So we would have to clear additional vegetation to get there. The area that we're working in is primarily cleared already, with the exception of those where the shed is, and just to the east where those parking spaces are. So there's a lot less clearing involved to leave it the way we have shown it.
So just to follow up then, because I'm just looking at the picture of this. It is the picture that we have an old picture then, because that shows a lot of vegetation between Sheep Pond Road and the edge of the lawn on the on the west side there. Just seems going on the north side, it would be a shorter cut, but I guess if the, and eventually it'll have to happen anyway, but so I was just thinking, so I was just sort of wondering out loud why we need to do that much disturbance in this sensitive area if we could just do a one-time second curb cut for that house. So that was really my thought there. And my only other question was, so how are you getting a pool out there if we're worried about vegetative?
Well, that's why we filed, one of the reasons we filed with Natural Heritage is to get that amount of clearing approved. So.
And my only other thing is, as we all know, I mean, this area, Sheep's Pond Road, has been eroding for decades here, with lots of houses going in the water there. So I'm wondering why we need to have a pool that will also actually end up there too. But is it getting a pool?
I don't think that's our jurisdiction. I think.
Right.
I know, I was just wondering how that was happening.
Well,
okay.
Kind of sharing some of your sense of practicality, among other things, maybe. Megan, anybody out there wanting to speak?
Not seeing any.
Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Make that motion, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Nat. Second?
Aye.
Dave? John? All right, roll call. Nat?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Judith? Aye. Okay, the public hearing is closed. What's your pleasure?
Take it, Nat.
Oh, God. I'll make a motion to approve with the following findings: that the second driveway access request is consistent with the general bylaw, that the second driveway access is not contrary to sound traffic and safety considerations, and that the second driveway access does not have an adverse impact on the scenic integrity of the neighborhood. And with the planning staff recommendations include that any future landscaping at the driveway entrances be limited to low growing plant material, and that the driveways be cleared of vegetation, et cetera, 12 feet, et cetera. And do you want to add, Dawn, I just want to ask you a question before we get a second. That is part of the agreement. You just slightly said it, and it went over my head, that if that has to get moved, that one for the northwest, it has to be only from that other road, correct? So they have to come through the property from the existing cut from the other house, right?
If we were going to utilize the cut that we're proposing now, as a matter of fact, our first plan that we were given by the owner and the architects was to have two driveway entrances, one on the east side, which is what we're proposing, and another one coming in along the north side where the shed is.
Right.
But that's when we realized it was a stipulation we could only have one driveway access.
Right. So that's already, in other words, the reason I'm asking is we don't have to have that in the language of this decision because it's already in the language of the property itself.
Definitely, yeah. It's restricted by the easement language already.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know. I should have asked that earlier. So
No.
so that
good
would be my
catch.
motion then.
So you happy with your motion?
Yep, thank you.
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Okay, and the motion includes the findings as well as the conditions.
Yes.
Roll call, Nat,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Fritz, Judith, aye. Okay, looks like we're down to the last one. Thank you, Don. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
PLSP.
Thank you, Don.
PLSP 2020-12-96, Adam Kessler, 11 Meadow Lane. Katie Mitchell's here for us. Thank you, Katie. We're sorry you're the last up, but
That's okay.
glad we're earlier. It could be 10 o'clock, so we all count our blessings as we find them. Megan, do you want to start?
Sure. So this application is requesting a second driveway access so that a horseshoe driveway may be created. I mean, that's pretty much all that there is to say about it. Unless Katie wants to give more detail.
No, that's pretty much it. It's just aesthetically works the best and allows easiest access for larger trucks, you know, trash guys, delivery trucks, that kind of thing. That's it. I mean, no other reason really.
Thank you. I was going to ask the reason. I appreciate that. I think that we probably will want to discuss that, but let me open the public hearing for anybody who's in attendance who'd like to speak to this matter. We're on 11 Meadow Lane. Proposal for second driveway shaped is a horseshoe driveway. If you're
Madam
interested
Chair.
in speaking, please raise your hand and Megan will identify you.
All right, so Elaine Mooney's up first. Jay, I'll recognize you after Elaine if that's all right. And then we have Andy Lowell after that. Okay, so
thank you.
Elaine, you're up first, okay? If you can unmute.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you very much. I live directly across the street at 10 Meadow Lane. And I just wanted to make the board aware of the fact that when I built and asked for a second curb cut, I was denied. It was said that I would be granted an opportunity not afforded to others, and that an unfortunate precedent for the driveway access would be set in conflict with zoning laws. I just wanted to make sure that my voice was heard, because I do oppose it in the sense that we should keep this going, that it's an unfortunate precedent that cannot be set.
Thanks, Ms. Mooney.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
you
much.
being with us.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Megan, who's next? You're mute. You're mute.
There we go. Jay, you're up next if you want to unmute yourself, and then we'll recognize Andrew Lowell, okay?
Great. Thank you, Megan. Madam Chair, members of the board. We're representing an abutter, and while we don't have a position necessarily on the second curb cut, we would ask the board as a condition, if they choose to allow the second curb cut, to restrict construction outside of the summer months, since it is such a narrow street, and that, you know, the construction that is being contemplated for the lot is very disruptive to the neighbors. So should you choose to allow this second curb cut, we would ask that the restrictions of no construction from Memorial Day to Labor Day be imposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. And Mr. Lowell, other Mr. Lowell. Which did Bob like best, Mr. Lowell and Mr. Lowell?
Oh goodness, don't ask that.
Hold on, I have to promote you to a panelist, it's saying. because we're on different versions of Zoom. So let's see if we can get this to work. Hold on.
I had a reason to go back and look at Smothers Brothers recently. I don't know if any of you have in a while, but it's definitely worth it.
Also, you're on camera.
All right.
Okay. Mr.
Hi.
Lo-
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Hi,
Yeah.
thank you. Andy Lowell. I'm an indirect abutter, but really directly affected by some issues that take place over on Meadow Lane. This immediate area of Meadow Lane is very vulnerable to flooding during normal rain events. The storm drain that's at the bottom of the street, right across from the proposed driveway, though recently improved, is thoroughly inadequate. The water table actually spills up and out of the storm drain during wet seasons. The house recently built at 11 Meadow, along with all of its impervious ground cover and no gutters or stormwater retention on the property at all, has seriously affected the area and neighboring properties in a very negative way. Elaine did not elaborate, but she has suffered from issues with flooding basements for quite some time. It is only exacerbated by this added ground cover in the area of impervious ground cover and no mitigation to take care of the stormwater runoff. There's still some areas in the immediate neighborhood that are capable of being developed in the future. And I'd like the board to consider that there are some issues of standing water already and basement flooding and also runoff going to a wetland that is untreated runoff as far as having fertilizers in it and causing algae blooms within the wetland. So I'm hoping at this point, until you know that the buildings that are going to go on this property will not be shedding runoff onto Meadow Lane, that you would consider denying this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Law. Megan, anybody else?
I'm not seeing anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay. I'll call on Ms. Mitchell if you'd like to respond to any of that, but then go back to the board.
Sure. As for Andy's comments, I can't. I didn't do the installation next door. I know the houses at 11A have already been approved. I know they have gutters, and all of my installations include extensive drainage. That's one thing that I'm really picky about. That's all I can say. I won't be the one maintaining the property. I hope to have some influence over who does. Because I don't use any chemicals. I'm completely organic, and I try to use native plants, very self-sustaining designs. So I don't see how we would be making the water issue worse. So I'm not real sure how that. What that has to do with my curb cuts. So I don't know if you can clarify how that is going to, if that has anything to do with my application. I'm a little confused as to why that would even be.
Just for your benefit, maybe Megan wants to stand on this. The criteria in the bylaw do not give second driveways as of course. We have to make affirmative findings that such a second driveway is consistent with the purpose and intent of the bylaw. not contrary to sound traffic and safety considerations, does not have an adverse effect on the scenic or historic integrity. So that's what we're looking at for our criteria. Megan or Leslie, do you want to say anything further on that? Okay, board
Madam
member.
Chair?
Yes.
Just a point of clarification. I think part of the disconnect is the address. The applicant, I believe, is 11A Meadow, and I think Andy's talking about 11 Meadow, which is, I think that might be part of the disconnect here, if I may. Yes.
That's important because that may affect the notice.
Yeah.
I'd be glad to clarify, Madam Chair, whenever you feel it's suited.
Who is that, Dave?
Andy.
David? Yeah, Andy, yes, thanks.
Well, the applicant was wondering how this is, how this relates. I realize 11 New Lane, or I'm sorry, 11 Meadow Lane is already there. So I'm working backwards with my issue, but the driveway is, even if it's a shell driveway or a gravel driveway, it has a hard packed soil underneath it. The driveway is not going to absorb any runoff water. And if any of you were actually to witness during a rain event how much water comes down, I'm using number 11 as an example, because you can watch the water run out of this driveway into the street. And simply to clarify with the applicant, number 11 has no gutters on it at all. Now, I realize 11A, you may be putting gutters on and to downspouts and hopefully to some dry wells, and it won't, maybe it won't add to the problem, but the property is probably 10 feet higher than the street. There's quite a grade there. The street in front of the property is the lowest point. The street has two higher points to it, the end of the street and the beginning of the street. So it already takes in a lot of water from all the uphill areas around it. And this is simply another uphill area where water will flow downhill from, because that's the way it goes, downhill to the center of the street, inundate the storm drain system, then inundate Elaine Mooney's basement. Elaine has to pump her basement out and inundate an abutting wetland. So there's a chain of events that takes place that needs to be witnessed so that it's understood.
Thank you. I know you've got your hand up, Ms. Mitchell, but I have a question first. I see Ms. McClure as well. This application says 11 Meadow, so is it properly noticed? Can we even act on it if indeed the property that Ms. Mitchell's referencing is 11A? Then how would anybody have correct notice? And if they've not noticed it correctly, I would think we'd have to put it aside. They'd have to re-advertise it.
I think.
Am I missing something here?
So the application says 11, and let me pull the actual application, and I could do a screen share. So bear with me.
11.
Leslie, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, the map and parcel for her project is 41,448, which I believe is the same map and parcel on the application.
Right, but on the design plan we're given, it says for 11 Meadow Lane.
So
there's also a 0.1.
So 11 Meadow Lane was also listed on the application, I think, with the map and parcel for 11A with the mailing. I don't know, because it's listed both of them here.
Is this the blue highlighted or the green highlighted lot?
It says right here on, okay, never mind.
Right.
It's the,
It's the
I
green.
thought it was this one.
The
Because
blue.
it says 11, but from what Katie's saying, it's this one.
Yes, it's the one in green.
Which,
Well,
if I may, Madam Chair, that brings
Yeah.
up another question. We're getting to that point where there's a driveway that's right on the corner of
Yeah.
that. So by creating a horseshoe, you're actually creating two driveways, and we're kind of crowding the field. And as you were saying, it's with the findings that is consistent with the general bylaw and also the sound, safe traffic and safety considerations. And just for aesthetic purposes, it's not really hitting the other things that we're looking at, where this once was one lot with a large road frontage that was subdivided into two lots, which pretty much cut it in half for the road frontage. And now we're squeezing a horseshoe, which is going to have two curb cuts, and conceivably the next lot could have two curb cuts with another horseshoe. And we're looking at 4 driveway cuts all in a row before that last one on the right. I think we've had many discussions in the past with Cliff Road about crowding driveways next to each other also. And we found it to be negative.
Yes, so let me just kind of review the bidding here. I don't think we've closed the public hearing yet, have we? Okay. I think we have a number of issues here, some about whether we've got an adequate, complete, accurate application to allow us to review it. Depending on which lot it is in the actual application, there may be need for further engineering analysis or something of that to that effect. There's also Ms. Mitchell, it's our time to speak here. For, if you don't mind, I'll get back to you when I am ready. Okay. The possibility of reaching a resolution tonight, I think, is a little bit vexing, because if the information we have is incomplete or in error, conceivably we should leave, let things stand. But if it's not properly noticed, we really are not in a position to act. So there's several different things going on here. I'd like to hear from the rest of the board who had their hands up. I think I saw Fritz and then Dave.
I had the same, my comment was the same as before, clarifying which lot. So it is the left-hand lot as we look at that picture. And I had the same concern as John had, where that turn right there, which is, I assume, the road, or maybe it's a driveway, but even if it's a driveway, that means the horseshoe would come out right next to the other driveway. And I think given the positions we've taken in the past, I'd have some concerns about a second driveway.
Dave?
I mean, I think both Fritz and John said it. I mean, there's only one other, I think, 2 curb cut driveways on that road. And so we would conceivably be adding, it used to be 1 lot with 1 driveway. Now it's 2 lots. Then we're going to give them 2 curb cuts. If one guy gets it, the next guy is going to want it. And then Miss Mooney's going to probably put in an application since she was denied across the street. So all of a sudden we are going to have a large collection of curb cuts in a small area. So I have a problem with that.
Others on the board want to speak to the substance?
I just make a quick comment, Madam Chair. The thing is that the biggest issue with the second curb cuts in a lot of these cases is backing out into the street, backing out into busy streets. That's my big one. I don't care about 2 curb cuts when it's far away from the other one or accessing a separate, whether it's another dwelling or something, where the property owner needs it. But in this case, you have plenty of room to make a vehicle turn around to get out. And that's where the problem comes in. Plus, on a dead end street, it's not like there's lots of vehicles coming back and forth in two different directions while somebody's trying to back out, like everybody in this Zoom meeting has witnessed on Fairgrounds Road numerous times, where somebody's trying to back out of their driveway on Fairgrounds, which is the type of stuff that is a problem with one curb cut not done correctly. So, you know, as far as the other issues is not in our purview, as far as water and that sort of thing, but this particular issue, every curb cut is its own DNA. There's lots of reasons for needing them, and there's lots of reasons that you know, that you don't need them. It depends on what the situation is on the street and on the property. So that would be my comment right now, Madam Chair.
Leslie and Megan, a procedural question. My sense is there's a pretty strong feeling within the board, which I share, that this should be denied. So we could close the hearing, since we've heard from people who assumed they were here to respond to that area, and we could then act on the merits, or we could say there's some flaw in the notice and say it needed to be reposted. We needed to hear it again. I just wonder if you have suggestions on those points. Leslie.
So I just quickly looked at the language in the general law, and I think the notice as published in the paper and as provided to the property owners of interest is sufficient. I mean, you only have to sufficiently identify the location of the property. So the map and parcel was correct. I think the difference between 11A or 11B doesn't make an important difference in whether or not you can identify the property, and people do know about it. They've been notified, they've contacted the office, they're participating today. So I don't see an issue with, you know, any flaw in the notice that would prevent you from acting on it.
Thank you very much. Members of the board, do you have anything further to say? Otherwise, I'm going to give Ms. Mitchell one more chance to speak, and then what we would need would be a motion to close the public hearing and then a motion on the merits. Ms. Mitchell.
I was just going to say what Leslie actually just confirmed. When I initially submitted the application, Catherine and Sarah and I spoke, and I actually originally had it on as 11A, and she corrected me and told me to change it to 11. So she figured out where the error was, but so I put on the application what she told me to. There's Catherine. Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
So
Thank you. We just need to be sure that everybody has a fair shot to hear it if there's any confusion. Do you want to say anything else on the merits, Ms. Mitchell, before we close the hearing?
No, I mean, if you guys don't like it, you don't like it. I mean, I'm not gonna.
Well, just to be clear, I don't think we act on do we like it or don't we like it. We're trying to apply the bylaw. And I think that's what we're talking about, is the nuance of the bylaw. But we appreciate your being here and raising your thoughts and clarifying about the notice and so forth. So is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
John moved.
Second.
Nat seconds. Roll call. John.
Aye.
Nat.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Judith. Aye. Is there a motion on the merits?
I'll make a motion to deny based on the contrary general purpose of the general purposes in the town bylaw.
Thank you, John. Dave seconded. Roll call, John. Oh,
Aye.
Leslie. Hold on just a second. Leslie wants us to make
Also,
findings.
you need to make the findings that it's contrary to sound traffic and safety considerations, or that it would have an adverse impact on the scenic or historic integrity of the area.
But I did that with the general, by being contrary to the general purposes, but I'll list those separately, Leslie.
So you're listing all three, John?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Do I have to read those, Leslie? Okay, I'll just make
and
those
Dave,
findings with the 3.
Is that the motion you want a second, Dave?
Yes.
Okay, roll call. John,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Judith, aye. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Sorry to keep you so late and then give you not the answer you wanted, but we appreciate your being here.
That's okay. I appreciate it. It's not that big of a deal. We'll make the changes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thank you. So look at that, 6:39, pretty amazing. Don't count on that for February. You see the notice from the agenda that what we had thought was a hearing on town meeting matters scheduled initially for January 14th is canceled. So instead we have a hearing on the 4th of February in the we actually have 2 scheduled, one on the 4th of February, then one in the afternoon from 1 to 4:30 for Wednesday, the 17th. So just to be sure your calendars are up to date, Leslie.
So the legal ad, which I haven't quite finished yet, but I'll send it around to you all just so you see, what you'll have in front of you ahead of time. For February 4th is going to be quite lengthy between the articles that were carried over from last year, the articles that you all agreed to sponsor for this year, and the citizen petitions that have been received so far. With the change in the timeline for town meeting, which I thought was not going to happen, and then it did, there's also a new window for a citizen petition warrant. So there may be additional articles coming your way. I know of at least one person that wanted to submit something. So be prepared, on the 4th for that big agenda. We can carry some things over to the 8th, depending on your schedule, I guess.
That's the 8th of March, right, Leslie? Not
8th of February. I mean, that's an option depending on the agenda. And then you have
you're
that.
you're saying you would we know that as of the 4th, but will you be able to have noticed it?
You don't have to renotice after the first publication of the notice. It just continues like a regular agenda item. So if you have to meet on the 4th and you want to continue a few things over to the 8th, we just have to do the 48-hour posting.
So all I would suggest on that is, please, for any folks who think they're coming before us for regular matters, I mean, it's nice every so often that people continue, but it sometimes feels like feast or famine that we try to manage the docket. We still are going to need like an hour to address Harbor Place when Andrew's available. And I don't know when that response is anticipated to be due, but that's a lot of work for the month of February. Plus, as NPEDC members, we agreed that we would observe the FinCom meetings where they're having hearings on things we're going to take up in that forum. So we need to be reminded of what those dates are as well, right? So, and then we have our standard NPDC meeting that Nat will lead us through. So I have a feeling we'll have like 6 meetings in the very short month of February. So get your oatmeal and get ready.
Was there anything on the 18th or the 19th? Leslie, I didn't catch that.
The 17th of February.
17th, okay.
And
Okay, thank you.
That's at 1 p.m., which I know is an unusual start time for our meeting. But it was the only thing available at all that week at any time, morning, noon, or night. So I sent everyone a calendar invite. It should be on your calendars if you've accepted it.
Oh, so you're going to enjoy your night off tonight because you're going to pay for it. Yep. Yes, Fritz.
You just mentioned a lot of things, and just so we're all on board, can we get, can somebody send out I won't say a reminder, but just a listing of those February dates? In other words, and I'm not, you were talking about the FinCom hearings, and I know we got a schedule, but it would be helpful with between what Nat may be scheduling, what the FinCom and these 3 meetings, if we could just sort of get in one list what those dates are. I don't know
Yeah.
how. I
know
don't know.
what you mean, Fritz. I know. Just a regular email with everything written down instead of all the meme things or whatever those are.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Megan.
I just want to make sure I get them on my calendar.
I'm trying to make it so
This is
easy.
like the review, the pre-exam review sheet. Know when to be there.
I got a lot of dates on that calendar already. I just want to make sure I've got them all and I got them in the right day.
We can absolutely do that for you. I think it makes it easier for us too, to just have a single list to look at.
Yeah, that's great. Really appreciate that, Fritz. Thank you for bringing that up.
And Leslie,
Pencil and paper.
given the rest of what you said, do you think the due date for Harbor Place comments is going to shift at all?
It may. I mean, everyone has a lot going on right now, and
yeah,
I don't know.
Who knows about COVID and everything else? So
I just have a question, Madam Chair,
yes,
regarding the information that we heard on the resilience. Are we I know it's very tight timing, but I'm just wondering if we're, if the board has any interest in trying to look at adjusting some of the zoning pieces that might pertain to.
I don't think they're ready to recommend it to try to bring it to town meeting this time out. And I think that just for myself, I think it's unfair when you've got this whole apparatus and all these people working very hard at it. I think if, for example, we really appreciate that they came tonight. It may be at some point that individual members of the board would want to say, can we put on our agenda, like come March or when we're through the crunch here, here's a list of topics I hope they'll address. Fritz is our member there, so he can guide us about what would be timely, but I really think because all these pieces are so connected between that and the master plan and town meeting, and I really do worry about the Harbor Place dimension. I wrote to the people involved in that today they wanted to set up a meeting and they haven't been back about it, about potential development agreement. I hate to see people spending money on design consultants and everything when literally ground is shifting underneath and we don't know what that is yet, so I think it'll be, there's a lot of practicalities. It'll drive a lot of people to want to move things along here, I would hope, but.
So then I have one more question, which is completely a different thing, but I think I've brought it up a couple of times anyway. I have a concern about the sort of wanton raising of buildings that I'm feeling like some of these buildings could be reused as affordable housing units. When they okay, for example, 119 Eel Point came in for a lot line adjustment where the line that they created went around both structures and left both structures in place. Then they came in for a minor lot line adjustment, and now both houses are being completely raised. And it would seem like, that's a lot of money to throw houses like that in the dump, or take them off island C and D. And I'm just wondering if there's a way, or who could I talk to about that?
Well,
really utilize money.
Good point, Campbell. And I know too, every time we get into this season, we all wonder, should I be individually creating a proposed article or whatever, you've done it, I've done it, you know, whatever. Dave Iverson, that sounds to me like a affordable housing topic. I don't know if the Affordable Housing Trust, if you have any articles that you're cooking up, or if when you do, where you send them, if you send them to straight into the select board or to us. And then Stephen Welch, that's also kind of a historic preservation issue. So Leslie and then Dave.
I just want to point out, I mean, we do have a demolition delay bylaw. You have to advertise and try to find a taker for your house before you can demo it. So that's one thing that's already in place. Housing Nantucket has a great program for housing donations to them, and then they reuse them. And I think on Nantucket, we're already doing a really great job with reusing existing structure. I mean, when I talk to people in other communities and they hear that we're always moving houses on and off of different locations, you know, they're completely fascinated by it. So I think we, you know, we've done a lot to address that, and we can only, you know, suggest things to owners, and that's it. They're going to do what they want to do, and they're going to, you know, have to at least follow the demolition delay bylaw.
Okay, so do
Madam Chair.
own
In order, Leslie, I've got Dave, I've got John, I've got Campbell wanting to come back. Campbell, since you began this, I'll give you, and then Dave, and then John.
Okay, I was wondering if the those options, because they all sound great, but if options are to the new homeowners when they, you know, all the options that could occur for their, you know, the properties that they're trying to dismantle. I'm just wondering how available that information is. Is it just automatically given to them at the beginning, or do they have to have the right kind of contractor to even mention it? Other than the demolition one, but the different options. I'm just wondering.
I'll call on Leslie and then we'll finish this, but I don't want to prolong us too long. If there's things, there may be some of these questions, if you send them by email, you may get a more responsive full layout, because they can consult with others and pull things together for you. Leslie, Dave, John.
So for the demolition delay, I mean, any consultant that they're using on island should know about that. But even if they made it all the way to a building permit for demolition, it would get denied if they couldn't prove that they had followed all the steps in the bylaw. So that's that one. And then coincidentally, I had just reached out to Anne at Housing Nantucket before the holidays and suggested that maybe she and I could work together on putting out some information to people as they come into Plus for new building permits and other things like that, making them more aware of her housing recycling program. So that's something that I've been working on. Well, haven't really been working on it, but she and I have communicated about working on it, and we're going to do something. So
thank you.
All right, let's see, had John,
Dave.
no, had Dave, John, I see Megan. Megan, are you going to tell us our Zoom is going to expire and we're going to blow up at 7?
No, I was just saying to add Stephen Welsh. He's had his hand raised for quite some time, and I'm not sure who has the availability to see the hand raise function aside from myself.
I don't, so thank you. Stephen, I'm sorry. Dave, John, and Stephen.
No, I mean, I think it's clearly a great idea, Campbell. It's just you need to have a piece of property to put it on and pull the permits and everything to get it there. So it's not that clear cut. We kind of have one in the hopper right now. We're trying to do it and move on a piece of property, which is exciting. But it is a great idea. It's just to have that property available at that time and then to permit it is really is a tough one. So, but I think maybe it's workable at some point. Right now, it's not.
John?
Yeah, I think it's well-intentioned, Cam, and I can personally say I've moved and recycled 8 houses already on the island, and not counting one that I facilitated with the housing Nantucket. And sometimes it just doesn't work. It's not worth it because it's advertised. There's a tight window of when it needs to be advertised, when it needs to be picked up and moved, because builders have a deadline also. They're not going to hold on to that house for 6 months and hold up construction. A lot of times you're also taking the house, and you have to have a lot to put it on, and the lot that you have to put it on has to conform with the setbacks, the size of the house, the ground cover. So sometimes, and I can tell you, it costs more to chop off a wing to make it fit the lot than it would be if I just stick built it from the get-go. So not only is there a delay, there's the expense, and I can tell you there were 3 houses that cost more to pick up and move and recycle than it would have been if I just started from scratch and stick build it according to the plan that I wanted to. So it's a good theory and it's a nice thought, but a lot of times it just doesn't work with the restrictions that we have. And actually, I live in one right now, and I am in the process of moving another. So it's possible, but it's expensive. Thank you.
Stephen Welch.
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair. So yeah, I support all the comments that have been made, and as opposed to repeating them, I directly support them. With respect to the process and designers and architects and contractors, just to give this a little context, it is, as Leslie alluded, kind of self-policing. And what I mean by that is people will come in front of the HDC with a home for a demo move off, and if it has any type of value and it's of a size of a structure or simplistic enough, not to say it has to be overly simplistic, but it's simplistic enough that it can actually be moved, I can assure you that there's no coercion, but there's a strong sentiment to push for use as affordable housing. But then it boils down to, is there land available? And I think that gets to the broader picture of a solution. This type of solution needs more than one part. And it's not just dedicating the housing to affordable stock, which I agree with Campbell on, but also, is there a land resource readily available either to hold the land, the structure, or for its final disposition. So it seems like it's a kind of a bigger, broader issue. And I did want to just let Campbell know that there is some policing in place. Oh, the last bit is that we do, I am aware that many of the homes that the Housing Nantucket does select, because they come back through and they apply for minor modifications to their structures. So it's definitely working. It's just, it'd be nice if we had 100% rate, but we certainly have much more than many communities. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone for your input. I'm just trying to think about the carbon footprint and a lot of different things along with that piece. So, but I feel much more knowledgeable now. So thank you very much.
Okay, Nat, you're mute.
No, I'm good, Judith. I mean, I heard all that. The biggest example of the most recent one I saw was 19 Loncon. Beautiful little cape out there. Couldn't find a home. It wasn't even 20 years old. So I think what John said and what Dave said and what Leslie said, it's all part of the problem. I mean, I see brand new wash machines thrown away, dryers, stoves, refrigerators, and those don't require permits to move down a road and move telephone wires. So it's tough. I mean, I get upset with some of that stuff too. It's just the way things are. It doesn't make it right. It's just the way things are. So I would love to cook some dinner.
Yep.
Stuff.
All right. Is motion to adjourn, anybody?
Motion to
I'll
adjourn.
make that motion.
Okay, John and Nat seconded. Roll call. John?
Aye.
Nat?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Judith, aye. Thank you to our trustee staff. We couldn't do it without you, and I bet you're glad to be done only 3 hours in. I was hoping for 2, but next time will be 8, so count our blessings. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank
Night.
you so
Roll
much.
Tide.
David, before you leave, I just want to tell you how handsome you look in that new facial hair you've got.
Thanks for noticing, Fritz.
Night all.
Like a scallop. Take care.
We're all gonna have